Before I begin with my questions, I have so many questions. I actually don't know where to start. I would like to ask you though, where are you at right now? What have you been working on for the past, let's say, 5 years, for the past few years? Is it focused on the Keeley's motor? Is it focused on the Dinospheres? What are you focusing on right now?
Well, it's always focused on the dinosaurs
Okay,
because we haven't completed that project, and there's an ongoing effort on my part to try and understand the physics involved
okay,
in that endeavor. We arrived at a single question
mm-hmm.
that needs to be answered, or we can't go forward. And I think this is a question that a great many people are asking because it hasn't been answered. And I'm not even sure people even know how to ask the question.
Okay,
The only person that's gotten anywhere near an answer was Tom Bearden
all right,
that I've seen. You know, there may be other people out there, but he's the only person I've seen who realizes that there's a question out there that we got to answer. And until we answer it, none of this free energy is ever really going to work for us. I mean, it might work for somebody working alone in a garage someplace or his basement. And by accident, he'll stumble on he'll just get it to work.
yeah,
But so far as being able to engineer a machine from scratch and have it work properly,
yeah,
we need to understand this principle that's missing. And I have been focused on answering that question, on asking the question in the right way for a number of years now, and I'm closing in on it.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got it seems like it's just right there in front of me.
Is it
But
related to scalar waves?
yeah, it's how do you turn scalar potential into kinetic motion?
Okay,
And that's the big question. Now, Bearden put out a little book. In fact, I got it right here.
yeah, I've read
The
that one.
Final Secret of Free Energy. And he talks all about this thing. And he says you do this, you do that, and you can get it to work. Well, we set about building a machine. I mean, after reading his book, I got really excited, and I said, okay, let's make a machine and see if we can prove this thing up one way or the other. You know, everybody's talking about it, or should be talking about it. And the more I focused on the machine we were building, the more I realized I didn't have enough information.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been reading book after book after book and just pouring over anything and everything I can get my hands on that'll help me understand this issue. Recently, a book came into my hands called, and this is going to sound strange to a lot of people, but I don't give a damn what they think. The title of the book is Christ Returns, Speaks His Truth.
Okay,
And it's basically it's a channeled work. The Christ consciousness channeled this material through this woman, and he said, basically this book is to set it straight what happened in Palestine 2,000 years ago.
okay,
He said, because when they wrote the Bible, they either left things out or they distorted it because their background, everybody's background in those days was Judaism. And a lot of that permeated what they wrote. So he wrote this book, or had it written. And in it, he's all over this question of how to turn the scalar potential into kinetic motion.
mm-hmm.
I mean, he's all over it. I've read this book through 4 times already. I'm reading it through the 5th time, and I'm taking a lot of notes now. And that's helping because it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
And then another book, a friend sent me this other book. When you're on a trail, this stuff happens to you all the time. Title of this book is Tomorrow's Energy Need Not Be Fuel.
Okay.
By a person named Arthur C. Aho. Here's the cover of it.
Okay.
And he's all over it. In a totally different perspective. You know, it's one of the interesting things about this energy work is Keely had his own jargon, and you had to really learn, you know, really work hard to learn his jargon. And then you read Russell, and he's saying the same thing as Keely, but he's got his jargon. So you got to learn his jargon.
Yeah.
And so you become multilingual in a sense. You know, you're reading all these different paradigms and different jargons from different perspectives. And it's interesting that they all talk about the same thing. You know, Russell was talking about how mind is the source of all motion, et cetera, et cetera. The same thing Keely said, almost identical, word for word. And then the Christ book talks about how everything is consciousness and mind can be converted. In fact, he explains his miracles based on that.
Yeah. I read your book about Atlin, and you do mention that it's for people who have like, let's say even semi-psychic abilities, they do notice that this sphere tends to have something similar to consciousness to it, right?
Yeah, yep, it does have consciousness, and because of the way it's structured and built, that it has a zone, if you will, or a place of consciousness that has pretty good coherency.
Even when it's static, without like moving parts, without having to move.
Yeah, it's just sitting there. It's like a Buddha meditating.
Wow.
It's just this mind sitting there.
Because you're not. So I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. Because you're not striking the frequencies, right? Because you have harmonizing. I noticed you have like harmonizing cylinders around it, and of course the sphere itself has its chord of mass.
So, well, yeah, the sphere and the machine itself, they all figure into that chord of mass.
Yeah.
And a big part of the equation is whoever's around it.
Okay.
So if they got a bad attitude, they're not going to be around it very long because that grows. Whatever attitude you have will grow.
Okay.
And if you got a bad attitude, I've seen people become very disturbed and they just have to walk off. But when you got a good attitude, then it becomes a joyful experience just being around it. If you got joy in you and happiness and all that, then it becomes a very pleasant experience. And we've seen people being healed around it. And when you study healing, like from Quimby's perspective, he says the same thing. He says he rediscovered how Jesus healed people. Well, you read this book, you understand how Jesus healed people. It's all about the mind, consciousness. So everything is about consciousness. And okay, in today's society, what are we taught about mind or consciousness? Zero.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
In fact, they go out of their way to prevent us from studying it. They call it hokum and BS and touchy-feely woo-woo stuff, trying to keep everybody from studying it.
Right.
But we have to study it. We have to stand against all these forces that are trying to keep us ignorant and stupid. So no, let's dig this thing out and let's figure out what's really going on. And that's pretty much what it boils down to. You know, do we have the courage and the fortitude and the persistence to stick with it, no matter who calls you what? You know, I've been called a lot of things by a lot of people. And
they
some
don't
of
get
them,
it. They just don't get it.
no, they don't get it. And, you know, our school systems and our society have exert great pressure on people.
Yeah.
And the movies and the media and all that, they all teaching everybody that psychic things are crazy, and you don't go there and you never talk about it. And so everybody's got this fear or anxiety when you get anywhere near the subject.
Hmm.
So people who should know better have an automatic aversion to it.
Right.
So you come along and you start talking about it, and you instantly have a reaction, And we're kind of fortunate in that there appears to be a movement worldwide where people are starting to question, and they're saying, oh, wait a minute, let's look at this thing called mind force. Princeton University, the guy that owned, I think it was Boeing Aircraft or one of those big aircraft companies, he went to Princeton and he said, look, guys, is this psychic stuff for real or not? And he said, I'll fund the research.
Hmm.
So they spent 28 years
Okay.
studying the psychic phenomena. Is this thing real? And after 28 years, they finally had to admit, yes, it is real. They say it's a small force, but it is a real force. Now, if Princeton says it's real, then it's real. And all these other people who say it's not real have got to go check with Princeton.
Yeah.
Because 28 years of lab research, they had to be meticulous with what they were doing because they knew it was controversial, and they knew that when they come out with their finding,
Hmm.
that they would be able to back it up with absolute data, which they had, which
Yeah.
they acquired, and they can. So nobody's questioning them now. Anybody's got any sense? Heck, Boeing set up a psychic lab
Yeah.
to further explore this. You remember that movie with Clint Eastwood where he flew the Russian jet? He stole the Russian jet and flew it with his mind. I forget the name of that, but so they know it's real, and the people that matter know it's real.
Yeah.
It's the general population that's been all brainwashed and dumbed down and everything. And so anyway, for me, it's real. I have seen enough
Yeah.
stuff. Years I've been working, that there is no question in my mind that this is real.
I mean, it's weird because people with like an awakened intuition can clearly see like how the science is so solid. I mean, this is the only science. I mean, the science of vibration is the basis for everything, and sympathetic vibrations.
Well, yeah, it's there's been enough studies all around the world, the Soviet Union, the United States, everywhere. Japan with Dr. Emoto's work, that's all mind force.
Okay.
And it's all been demonstrated and demonstrated and demonstrated to, there's nothing, I don't think there's any subject in human history that's been explored any more than that.
Okay.
And it's real. We got a machine upstairs, well, in my building, we got a machine upstairs that heals people. I've seen any number of people interact with it, talking to it, playing music with it, all kinds of stuff. Just endless amount of things.
Okay.
We had a computer. We had a guy from Europe. He had a computer that you attach it to your body or your head, and it would read your heart vibrations.
Mm.
And then he had the program would convert those vibrations to different music sounds. And when he told me that this thing would sense the heart vibration and everything, he says, oh my God, let's hook it up to the Atlan, the Dynasphere, and see what we get. And he did. And it was absolutely extraordinary. He says, oh my God, this thing's got a heartbeat.
Oh my God.
And we played around with it quite a bit, and Dr. Emoto was there, and a bunch of other people were there, and we playing with it. And I recorded some video, and it's up on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so, not only do we hypothesize that all this stuff goes on with the Dynasphere, but here's a machine, computer, hooked up to it, showing that there's something going on with it. So anyhow, I've been working on this question, you know, how do we convert scalar? And scalar, by the way, has many, many synonyms. And Russell made that one machine that he built, the optical generator, that operates on the same principle. It's not a mind force device, but there's a lot of the same principles involved.
From what I understood from Tom Bearden, I think scalar waves are similar to when you oppose two frequencies or two waves. When you oppose them with great force, you get something similar to time bending, or like it's changing. It's like a quantum. It is a scalar force, literally speaking, because you're opposing two frequencies to each other. So something is happening in the middle. They're not canceling each other. So this is how Tom Bearden put it, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's one of the definitions, which is phase conjugation, what it's called.
Okay.
Where you got the positive going up and you got the underneath, and they cancel. They're still there.
Yeah.
It's the summation of them that sums to zero, but it's still there. And Keeley called it a harmonic wave, the full harmonic wave. And Russell refers to it in many different ways. He calls it vacuum energy and the stillness. He even calls it gravity, which is, you got to think about it for a few minutes and then you got to agree with him. Yeah, okay, I get that. And he calls it mind. Well, in the mind realm, I tell people that there's two fundamental states to mind or consciousness. And you have to understand this difference, or else this mind stuff means nothing. There's the undifferentiated mind, which some call God. And you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't measure it, but that's the scalar potential of the mind consciousness.
Right.
When the mind becomes differentiated or refracted, then we have what we call thinking, or the ego. Whereas the undifferentiated whole mind is the knowing mind. It's like the Buddha mind, you know, it just knows.
Yeah.
And then it differentiates. For instance, like the light coming from the sun, we can't see it, right?
Right.
But when it hits water particles in the atmosphere, we get rainbows. Well, that phenomenon is called refraction. It's what Keeley called differentiation. It differentiates the one into the many.
Yeah.
Okay? So we as humans operate on a differentiated level. We do the thinking, which is positive and negative. It can be destructive or constructive, so it's a polar thing. Whereas the knowing mind, the undifferentiated mind, is whole, singular. So the question is, how do you take the whole undifferentiated mind and convert it into a polar state? Because the polar state denotes motion.
Right.
And that's what we're after, right? We want to take our motors and rotate them. So that's motion. Tesla made the comment that electricity is everywhere prevalent. You just need to set up a generator and turn it, and we got electricity.
Yeah.
Well, there's a neutral electricity, which is its undifferentiated state. But the minute you move a magnet against it, it differentiates it into two states.
Correct.
So then you got your circuit, see.
Yeah. Wow.
But can we do that differentiation without the motion? Can we turn that crank without motion? You know, that's what Bearden was saying.
Right. And you need to resonate first with whatever is out there, whatever energy. You have to tune to that frequency first. Then you have to find a way to extract.
I guess
Yeah.
I haven't the answer yet. But
Dale,
I'm
I think you're the only one on the planet who can explain this to me. The evolution of tones and colors. I'm still studying this, maybe 10 years, and still do not understand what it says.
I don't either.
Oh my God.
But says she talks in there about the undifferentiated and differentiated states using her terms.
Yeah.
And she calls the undifferentiated state the fountain which he calls yellow or white light, the music note E.
Yeah.
Remember?
Right.
He talks about the music note E. And that's about as far as I got with it.
Oh my God.
Well, I'll tell you something else that clicks with that.
Yes.
Years ago, back in the 80s, before I got into Keeley and all that, I got really interested in the Great Pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And corresponding with an engineer at JPL, so we had a pretty good conversation going. And I was calculating the wavelengths in the King's Chamber.
Okay.
And they all resonate to a perfect E.
Okay.
So there's Hughes and there's the Great Pyramid, and are we on to something here or what? I don't know. According to Keeley and Russell, it's an easy thing to transmute elements when you work from their perspective.
Yeah.
And I have not run into anybody, anywhere, who understands Russell enough who can explain that process. And that's supposed to be my winter project. I'm supposed to be writing a book on chemistry from the Russell perspective.
Beautiful.
There's so many things keep interrupting. I don't know if I'm going to get to write that book or not, but that's what vibration does. It behaves in a orderly fashion like that. So all you got to do is understand the vibration, and you get the picture.
Yeah.
And he says that in the wave is the secret of the universe.
Yeah.
Well, the wave is a vibration. So when you understand the physics of the wave or the vibration, then you understand what he's talking about. But you know what? He never wrote the book. He said in the Universe of One,
Mm-hmm.
he's got a chapter in there on tone. And he said there's not enough space to write about the subject in this book. And he was going to write another book, which would have been all about tone, which is vibration.
Oh,
And as far as I know, he never wrote the other book.
that's a shame. That's a shame.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's a shame. So, Dale, when Keeley speaks of chords, does it mean like the musical chords, like when you say C and E and G, or does he mean as in octaves, like the same frequency on different octaves? Because he speaks a lot of, fifths and the seventh and ninth. He speaks of that. Is he talking about octaves or is he talking about chords? Yeah, like as in musical chords.
Well, when he uses the term chord, he is talking musical chords.
As in C, E, G.
Yeah, C, E, and G is a triplet,
For
three-note chord.
Yeah.
So if you look at his charts, a lot of that music notation is in triplets. And there's a reason behind that. The laws of being that Professor Brinton wrote, who was constantly visiting Keeley in his laboratory,
Mm-hmm.
talks about all forces are made up of three modes, he calls them. So you look at Keeley's charts, and here's all these musical triplets.
Right.
And the information he gave us on the Dynasphere, it's all based on triplets.
Okay.
So the harmonic, inharmonic, and dominant modes. We know what the harmonic is. We know what the enharmonic is. We're still questioning exactly what is this dominant that he keeps talking about, because that's the one that controls the other two.
Okay.
And there are many explanatory statements in the Keeley literature about the dominant, and they seem to conflict with each other. But that's just because we don't understand what he's saying, where he's coming from. Where is he coming from? And I think he says right in there, the dominant is the mind force. Okay, how do you build mind force into a mechanical device? Because all of his devices were mechanical. And they said only he could operate his machines, where his mind could trigger these machines. And then somewhere in the literature he says he worked for 8 years to modify his machines so that anybody could run them.
Wow.
But he didn't say any more about it than that.
And, I've seen in one of your videos you have one of his actual motors, and you were working on it, and you mentioned that when you put a drop of water, it like came to life once you put water in it.
Yeah, that was the original Keeley motor that Victor had.
Yeah.
And I had a brainstorm one day, and I drove all the way to Iowa. I was so excited because that's where Vic was. And I said, Vic, I think I know what makes this thing work. So we put it in the bathtub, and we put water hose to it, and that thing just went nuts. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
But the tubing on it were all cracked and split and everything, and that was quite, that was a highly engineered piece of equipment. Keeley made 129 versions of that machine, and supposedly this was the last one.
Mm-hmm. Very refined.
Yeah, very refined. So he had everything all refined, and so when we gave that flywheel a spin, it didn't run, but there was an incredible amount of pressure being shown. All of a sudden, there was all this pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It was extraordinary.
I mean,
And
yeah.
we didn't want to damage it. It's a historical device, and so we took it out, and we had to spend quite a few hours repairing gaskets and things like that before we could do this demo.
Yeah.
But that's all that was. Then Keeley himself said that approach, using the water and the water hammer and all that other stuff, he said that's not the way to do this. So he stopped working on that particular type of motor, and he went to working with these Dynaspheres,
Mm-hmm.
which he could get running. I mean, there's lots of stories about these things running for him and other people seeing them run and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no pressure in the Dynaspheres.
Yeah.
Have you ever torn an automobile engine apart and put it back together?
No.
Well, the world would be a lot better off if more people did that, because it's a complicated thing, an internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
It's 100-year-old technology, but there was a time my mom's car went down, and me and my sister's fiance, he was a mechanic. He had a shop. We had her car in his shop, and we tore it all apart and put it all back together and wouldn't start.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've built several engines. I'm not a stranger to that process. And here's a man who earns his living doing it.
Yeah.
We couldn't get the engine to start. And we took it apart and put it back together, I don't know how many times. And we, every conceivable thing that we could think of, we did multiple times.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get it to start.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea that a Dynasphere or any one of Keeley's devices were built on a high degree of precision in design and construction.
Yeah.
Until and unless we understand the principles involved, as well as he did,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to get them to work.
Yeah.
I mean, the chances of us stumbling on it are greater than us figuring it out.
Yeah.
So people have made comments that, look how long Pond has spent working on this thing. And I said, well, it's going to take as long as it takes, and there's no guarantee I'm going to get it done. There's so much to learn. I mean, I'm under a learning curve. I've been under a learning curve for 40 years, and it doesn't stop. And I'm cutting out most of it. I'm cutting out most of the mathematics and most of the chemistry. I'm cutting out just to lessen the burden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's refine this down to the one single question.
Yes.
And that's what I've done. I've weeded out everything. I said, okay, this is what we've got to address, and this is what we've got to answer. And until we do, none of this stuff's ever going to work, unless by accident.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
So-
amazing, Dale. This is amazing.
So, we're in good company. Bearden wrote this little book, and I think we need to spend more time reading his book. And these other books I mentioned to you, and there's more. There's more books around here like that get into around it.
Yeah.
Russell is all over it. My God. I went through Atomic Suicide, word by word, because some people kept talking that Tesla told him to bury it for 1,000 years. Remember that? And I said, and then Lal Russell comes along and says, no, this is too important. We got to publish it. So they published it in that book. And I said, okay, what did they put in the book that Tesla told them not to put in the book?
Yeah.
So I went through that thing word by word, and I put it in my wiki, svpwiki.com.
Mm-hmm.
And what that man wrote is absolutely astonishing. It is so far beyond most people's capability because it's so voluminous. And you have to have all these preconceived concepts in your mind before what you're reading makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fault anybody not understanding Russell. I don't know anybody out there that understands Russell. I don't even understand Russell, because there's so many parts and pieces to it. His work is just as complicated as Keely's. Anyway, that's what it's all about.
This is unbelievable. I think we're out of time, Dale, and I don't want to take more of your time, but I hope we can do this again in the future. I'm going to be studying your materials more and more, so I have so many questions, so this is beautiful.
Go on the wiki, go on the svpwiki.com.
Yeah.
That's where I'm putting up all my findings, and all my research is going into that wiki.
Yeah.
And it's all interlinked because it's a wiki. It'll do that. You can link everything together.
Yeah.
And there's like 7,000 pages of information up there now.
Mm-hmm.
All this Keely material, all this Russell material, everything else I'm finding is going in there.
Yeah.
So if you spend time going through there, we can have a much richer conversation next time.
Excellent. I'll be honored. I'll be honored. So I'm going to be checking that out. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Great.
Very good.
Great. Dale, thank you so much for your time. I'm so honored to be speaking to you.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.